Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being a part of my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And first of all, I think it's a great project, and I've been encouraging all of my students to sign up for it. But my name is Michelle Hamlin. I'm a space lawyer. I am the co-director of the Center for Air and Space Law at the University of Mississippi School of Law. We have the only LLM program, so it's a Master of Laws program in air and space law, and we're the only ABA accredited law school in the country that offers an air and space law concentration for our JD students. And so it's a really exciting time to be a space lawyer because, as you know, there is so much going on in space. Every day there's some new announcement, whether from a sovereign or from a commercial entity. And our view at the center is we need to figure out not how to, bind people or stop them. We need to find the regulations that will help to ease them and ease our humanity from an earthbound to a truly spacefaring multiplanetary species. I am also the co-founder of For All Moonkind, which is the only organization in the world focused on and committed to protecting cultural heritage in outer space. And we start with, my t-shirt's not working, we start with protecting the boot prints. There's a whole lot of legal reasons why they're not protected right now. And we really think that's a shame. And we believe as we go back, we're completely supportive of a human return to the moon, but we need to go responsibly and manage our heritage carefully.
That's really awesome. I think I may have interviewed one of your students yesterday, Samuel Thorpe.
Oh, great. Good for him. Yes.
I didn't quite make the connection until I noticed that you were at Old Miss, as well, and the National Space Society, a legal
Yes.
work that they do.
Yes, I should say, I obviously am very passionate about space and love it. And so I am also the executive vice president of the National Space Society, which is the largest sort of civilian group in the United States that's really focused on, we're still using the word settlement. I'm trying to move away from that, building human communities in space. And so Sam, who you spoke to yesterday, is one of our bright shining stars in the JD program. And he is one of our inaugural National Space Society legal fellows. We're hoping to create a larger pool of space lawyers with this next generation of students, because two things. First of all, everything we do on Earth, we're going to do in space, right? So we need lawyers, unfortunately. But the other thing is that it's just such an exciting time we're evolving the law, and everything that we do on Earth is affected by stuff we do in space. And that includes going back to the moon. Figuring out how to build habitats on the moon is going to help us figure out how to build better homes here on Earth and things like that. And I tell my students, everything we do on Earth has a space aspect to it. And so I say 5 years from now, if you don't have a space law class in your system, and if you haven't taken space law, then you're going to be doing your clients a disservice, no matter what kind of law you're practicing.
Yeah, definitely. And, space law is so much different than other areas of the law, where you have, courts of jurisdiction, and you have, people legislating things. It seems like we don't even have the infrastructure to actually have effective space law. And is that just an incorrect view, or is that actually some truth to that?
Oh, no, it's absolutely true. And I love so first year of law school is very disciplined. Everyone takes the same courses and it's all driven by case law, and you have to read lots of cases to understand what the law is. And here's the law as it's written. When I get the students in my space law class, I'm like, okay, we have 4 treaties and that's it, and we're building off of that. The United States has the most robust space licensing program in the world, which is really great because part of the Outer Space Treaty requires that nations authorize and supervise activities of all their nationals in space. And so the United States has taken that responsibility very seriously. And so we do have a lot of regulations. What's great about those regulations is that our rulemaking process in the United States allows for input from private citizens, from commercial entities, from businesses. And so our rules aren't just, okay, this is what you're going to do. Our rules say, okay, we have this responsibility under the Outer Space Treaty. So we are going to suggest these rules. And then we're going to get comments from everybody who wants to comment. And then we'll think about it and produce a new rule. So it's a great process for law students to understand how the law works and to help actually contribute to the evolution of the law.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of the evolution of that law, it seems like we have potential conflicts between several spacefaring, countries, but and it seems like that there's probably mechanisms in place to get them worked out and they could be productive and what have you. But there's also sort of like this conflict between our contention between current spacefaring and space accessible countries and other countries that might at some point in the future become spacefaring and who want to make sure that their place is preserved in that future. And it seems to me that they would be a little bit less inclined to move quickly. They would probably want to put on the brakes and, kind of let things develop a little bit more for them down here. I was wondering how you viewed that sort of tension and conflict.
So you are absolutely right about that tension, and there's a real sort of we don't want to be left behind feeling, right, for developing countries, for countries that aren't spacefaring countries yet. But the Outer Space Treaty is very clear that space is for everyone, freedom of exploration for all, and that not only is it that in the Outer Space Treaty, but it's now considered customary international law. So no nation may claim territory in space by sovereignty or any other means. And that the concept of the freedom of use and exploration is hammered at the beginning of every single treaty, resolution, every conceptual thing we have about space. The United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, UNOOSA, do a really great job of capacity building, trying to make sure that even as the China and Japan and the United States are making these leaps and bounds, we're bringing along non-spacefaring countries. And so under USA, we have a lot of non-spacefaring countries that have actually been able to now launch CUBE satellites from ISS, but the tension you're talking about, I think, is really a fundamental question of resources. And we see this on Earth with respect to the law of the sea, right? So if you mine a resource, what if spacefaring nation A gets to the moon first and mines all of its resources and becomes, owns everything and becomes a trillionaire budget 80,000 times over? What happens to the non-spacefaring country like Ghana or Indonesia, Bangladesh? And that is something that people are thinking about very seriously, both in the COPUOS, in the national government. If you look at the Artemis Accords that the United States government has implemented, they don't say, hey, we're going to go there and we're going to keep everything. There's a sense that we need to collaborate. And that's the honest truth is we only succeed in space if we take advantage of the diversity we have on Earth. If we look at the space programs from the 50s and 60s, we had the Soviet Union versus the United States. The United States is a nation of immigrants. There's a lot of diversity. There's not a lot of diversity in the Soviet Union. The United States puts humans on the moon first. The Soviets had a lot of firsts themselves, but it's not this concept of this tension between spacefaring and non-spacefaring is something that we have to overcome in order to be successful. So this collaboration, I keep saying, and I keep putting it out there, and I'm hoping State Department hears that, Artemis ought to partner with non-spacefaring nations. Think of ways to bring them along with the United States. We have Australia and Canada. That's wonderful, but we also ought to have Ecuador and Madagascar because space is for everyone.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, I guess to the first point about no one can own space and like the moon and other resources are for everybody. And we had a space lawyer come and visit our North Houston Space Society chapter a few years back, and we were kind of talking about the Outer Space Treaty, and he saw the non-interference clause in this Outer Space Treaty as being a way for essentially countries to kind of control parts of space resources. That the first person there kind of is able to do what they want because they're not interfering with anybody else and it's for everybody else. But from that point on, kind of their activities have to be taken into account by other countries, and so it I guess it's sort of like a public park. Everybody puts down their blanket to have a picnic. There may not be any places to put down a blanket to have a picnic, even though it belongs to everybody. And I just, is this truly a feeling that these other countries have? And now, what do you see as being the pathway to sort of addressing that?
So I have never actually heard that analogy. I love it. The putting your blankets down, because it's so true. You're right. And how many times have we gone to a fireworks display, an hour too late, and not, then we're sitting on, on the curb. It is absolutely a concern. And there's sort of the one school of thought is space is infinite. Don't worry. There's so much of it, anybody. So we're really, and that's true, but we can't reach all the infinite yet. We will be able to at some point. And what's so important about the moon is not just, resource utilization and mining. It's actually learning how to live in space, learning how to live without as much gravity, learning how to protect ourselves from radiation. And so, we're not going back to mine the moon and become trillionaires. We're going back to learn how to live in space and how to expand beyond space. At least that's my view. But this is a very real issue about, and it's why heritage protection is so important in space, because the Article 9 that you talk about, we have to, when you have activities in outer space, have to be conducted with due regard for everyone else, right? And and the harmful interference actually says, it doesn't say you cannot harmfully interfere. It says if you think you're going to harmfully interfere, you have to have a consultation. So it's important that the treaty doesn't actually say you can't harmfully interfere. It just says you have to basically warn somebody beforehand. And I will point out the Artemis Accords make it very clear that you will not harmfully interfere. So the Artemis Accords have done a good job of sort of filling gaps in the Outer Space Treaty. What does due regard mean? Let's say somebody wants to go to Tranquility Base. What does it mean to have due regard for a non-operational spacecraft? There's nothing, you have a liability section of the Outer Space Treaty that says if you do damage to my thing in space, then you owe me. But there's no, what are the damages to something that's not operable? I mean, it's incalculable, but in a court of law, somebody takes the ladder off of the Eagle, there's no harm done. There's no liability to be paid. And so I believe that if we look at heritage, and there are 112 sites on the moon with human stuff on them, right? So we don't think every single thing on the moon needs to be protected, but we need to think about how to protect it. And when we speak at the UN, those are the questions we always get. Nobody says, that's a really dumb idea. Who cares about protecting stuff in space? They all say, yes, this is human heritage. That boot print is as important as the first boot prints we found in Tanzania, which show that we became bipedal. But people say, it's really hard. How are we going to do that? Because if you protect that site, then you are claiming sovereignty over it. You are stopping other people from exploring it, from using it. And so we believe that on the back of preservation, on the back of this concept of, we agree this is a human heritage, this is something all of humanity should protect. 193 nations on Earth have agreed in the importance of World Heritage protection. That's how many nations have signed the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. So we get that kind of spirit of collaboration and understanding, and we bring it with us into space. And the first thing we do is we decide, okay, what in space now, on the moon, on Mars, and other celestial bodies we ought to protect. And then from there, the next step is, okay, how are we going to protect other things, operational spacecraft that are coming? How are we going to protect the interests of nations that aren't spacefaring yet? And there's all sorts of examples of how we do that on Earth or on orbit. The ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, reserves certain frequencies for developing countries. And so there's models out there to do this. We just need to get to the table.
And yeah, that's interesting about international frequency use, because in a way that is sort of the exact same thing that we're talking about. What do you see in terms of progress towards getting to some type of agreement that's similar to allocating frequencies and actual being able to, maybe the UN partitions part of the moon and says, China, go develop it or something like that.
So it's interesting. The For All Mankind has been had the honor of being a permanent observer to the UN Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space for 3 years now, and so it's like having a front row seat at the evolution of international space law. Before last year, they met in February, but they weren't able to meet in April or June. But at the February meeting, they decided to convene a exploratory group. They call it a formal, informal group to discuss whether to have a working group on space resource utilization. Okay, so that's the first step. And that formal, informal group, it meets for about a year to make a recommendation about whether there should be a working group. And then that formal recommendation is debated in COPUOS for another year before a working group is actually formed. So we're 3 years at least from the formation of an international working group that will actually look at these issues. So we're pretty far. I mean, when my husband and I started For All Mankind, I'm a corporate attorney by training. I did M&A work, and so I closed deals, right? So when we realized that the blueprints that Tranquility Base are not protected heritage, it was in 2017, and I was like, we will get a convention by 2019, by the 50th anniversary. That is my goal. That is my mission. And then I met the COPUOS, and I was like, okay, we'll take our baby steps. And we're delighted because we are part of those baby steps now. But the COPUOS works by consensus. Everyone has to agree, or nobody can disagree with something. It's a very long process. People get very frustrated by it. I mean, hence the United States introduced the Artemis Accords because they want to spur more discussion. But it's worked really well. The Outer Space Treaty was negotiated under the COPUOS, and it's kept the peace in space all this time.
Yeah, I think the first time I had heard about All Moonkind was 2016 at the New Worlds Conference in Austin, and I think your husband gave a talk about it.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, if we had rose tinted glasses then, huh? Yeah, we were going to get a convention. We were going
but maybe it's good you didn't. I mean, you may not have gotten nearly as far as you did if you knew how challenging it would have been.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I will say though, we don't have our convention yet, but we do have the One Small Step Act in Congress, passed the Senate unanimously in 2019, languishing in the House. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in Washington. We are kind of holding out hope that it'll pass, but I think the days of that is just the last week they're meeting. But we also got Section 9 of the Artemis Accords is devoted to heritage and heritage protection. And we have delegates at the UN COPUOS who are now starting to mention heritage protection in their general exchange of views. So we don't have our convention, but we have made huge, huge inroads, and we are really proud of that.
And do you see heritage protection ultimately leading to property rights of some type? Or do you see the fear of that as being a hindrance to heritage protection?
I'm going to keep my optimism and say the former. I think that, yes, there's a huge fear about if you decide that something is protected, that means nobody can go in that space. And that seems to just go against the grain of everything we know about space law, or, right? But I don't think we're going to create a governance structure that actually calls something property. I think we're going to have to leave that concept behind and come up with something else. Right now the Artemis Accords talk about safety zones. But the fact is that due regard provision is in the Outer Space Treaty. And so we do have some precedent to work with. And so our view is, let's define due regard. What does it mean? Under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, there's actually been a case about it. And the judges said, well, there's no bright line rule. You have to consider what's been done against what was needed. And, that balancing act is something that lawyers love, because that just assures litigation, right? And so there's my paycheck. Then we need bright line rules, because we want money to go into the investment of things like actually protecting the heritage or creating a mining operation. We don't want to pay lawyers. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So I think that common sense will prevail in understanding that we need to figure out some sort of concept, because we are going back, and private companies are going back, and sovereign nations are going back. And I think slowly people are beginning to understand, well, certainly we have reached a point where people are thinking, well, yes, we do have heritage up there we have to protect while we go back. And now we're slowly getting them to realize, oh, you're right. If we actually figure out a regime to protect, then we can borrow from that to think about how we're going to deal with property.
Yeah, my dad's also a lawyer, so I've talked to him sometimes about how I think certain things really seem way more complicated than they should be. And he tells me, well, it's been working for hundreds of years, so
Yeah.
let's not change it. So that's not exactly true. But when did you find out that we were planning to send people to the moon?
When did I find out?
Yeah.
Boy, I feel like it's been, I mean, I follow this stuff. Isn't that funny? It's like you're asking, where were you when Neil Armstrong put his foot on the moon? You know what? I have never. When I was 4 when we first landed on the moon, and I am not quite that generation that has always had a human in space. But I never thought we wouldn't go back. I guess is the best way to say it. I don't know where I was when Vice President Pence announced the Artemis, the first man and the first woman and next man to the moon by 2024. I couldn't tell you. But I have always understood that we were going to go back. I honestly thought, and I still think, that maybe the Chinese will put the next humans on the moon, not the Americans, which I think is fine. But I can't live in a world where we wouldn't have gone back.
Yeah, I think that's fine as long as it's soon, and because they're a lot farther ahead than we think they are. But I don't think that's so fine if that's in the 2030s.
No, agreed. Yeah, we need to get back. It's so incredible though when you think, and this is going back into history, sort of how long it's taken us to be in a position to send humans back. And I know a lot of that is political will, not so much technology, but it really shows humans had no business being on the moon 50 years ago. I mean, those people, and when I say those people, I mean everybody involved with the Apollo program and the Mercury program and the Gemini program. What they did is incredible. It just, period. It's so inspirational.
Would it surprise you that about 90% of the non-space people I've interviewed don't know we're planning to go back in 2024?
It wouldn't. I've been at so many cocktail parties where I start talking about the moon and people's eyes glaze over. And I think about it's one of the biggest issues that I think the UN USA, the Office of Outer Space Affairs, has to deal with is in order to properly fund space exploration, you need the public will to be involved, right? Because you're talking about a lot of taxpayer dollars. Even as we sort of move into commercial space in the United States, we're looking at private-public partnerships. We're looking at the government being the main client for a lot of these private companies. We need taxpayer money for that. And so it's deeply frustrating to me that people don't understand how important this is. The concept of, of the fact that we use space all the time and people don't realize that, for disaster management, for human trafficking control, for taxes, right? And people just don't get it. And then I don't want to use the Sir Edmund Hillary, but we're not going to space because it's there. We're going to space because there's so much to learn there about where we are, about the cosmos, and Frank White, who wrote The Overview Effect, right? I love the way he starts his talks, because when he talks to students, he says, who wants to go to space? And of course, everyone raises their hand, and he says, well, congratulations, you're in space. We are part of the cosmos already. I mean, it's silly to sit here on this earth, as beautiful as it is, and not think that we ought to be exploring the cosmos. And that really frustrates me. I have also, done some research on, if you look at people lauding SpaceX and Elon Musk for bringing space back, right? But his first launch, I think, has maybe 4 or 5 million views. Taylor Swift's next song has already 1 billion views. I mean, so there's a huge disconnect with the general public, and I don't know how to fix that, except to, what you're doing is amazing. To just keep putting people out there and talking about it, and hopefully at some point people are just gonna be like, oh yeah, okay. It's what I do in Mississippi. I ride the bus to school, and I always hand out my card, which is the boot print and my logo, and I'm like, I'm a space lawyer, hey. And so I'm pretty sure I have a reputation. Well, pre-COVID, I was getting a reputation of a crazy moon lady, but yeah, it's just, we just got to keep talking it up.
Absolutely. And, Tom Cruise is supposed to be taking a trip to the International Space Station next fall. What do you think about that? I mean, obviously it's going to get a lot of attention, but is any attention good, or do you think there's some risk about it being maybe the wrong type of attention?
No, I think all attention is good. I think it's brilliant. I think he's going to bring so much attention to the ISS, to space. I applaud him. He's obviously going to have to pay the government a certain amount, so we're adding value to a station. The concern I have is the media tends to talk only about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, and now Tom Cruise. And so people think that space is just for the really wealthy. And so we're sort of missing this connection of, no, I live here in Connecticut and I do space law. I wish that, I'm never going to make it to ISS or to the moon. I don't see myself having the money to buy a $300,000 ticket on Virgin Galactic. But that doesn't mean I'm not involved in space. That doesn't mean I'm not benefiting from space. And so I wish the media narrative, yes, and I applaud Bezos and Musk, and thank God for them, for taking their personal wealth and pursuing this, because we need that. But I do wish the media would sort of dial it back a little bit and remind people that there are other ways to do space other than spending your own money like that.
Absolutely. And I guess, have you heard of Space Hero?
No.
So it's something that's just getting started, but the same group that's supposed to be sending Tom Cruise to the International Space Station is also supposed to be sending the winner of this contest to the International Space Station. But it's a global contest, a reality TV show that the winner of which is supposed to go to the International Space Station for 10 days.
Oh, fantastic. I am all for that. Where can I sign up to participate?
I hope to find out actually soon. So you mentioned that you would be willing to go to space, if it was affordable. How far would you go? Just suborbital to the International Space Station, to the moon? Would you go see the footprints and maybe put a little?
I gotta see the blueprint. Yeah, absolutely. I would in a heartbeat. I would go to Mars. My kids are grown. They don't need me anymore. I would go to as far as we could. I just think personally, and there's just so much to learn out there, so much to see. Sign me up all day long.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you would like to talk about before I have Andrea come and talk to you?
No, I would want to thank you again. I think your project is great. I'm so delighted that Sam signed up, and I'm going to make sure other people sign up. I hope, this realization of living at a time on this doorstep, right, on this threshold, is just so fascinating to me. And anyway, having you record these thoughts and is just, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I like to think of too, is that the audience for this doesn't exist yet. It's the people, 40, 50 years from now wondering, before we built that city on Mars, what were people thinking?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Well, sounds good. I'll just have her come over here and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for letting me jump into your interview here.
No, I'm delighted.
So I'm writing an article because Nathan is coming up on 1 year of talking to someone different every single day, which is a major commitment that most of us probably would not do. I know on Sundays I pretty much don't talk to anybody. But so I wanted to ask, how did you find out about this? How did you find out about his project?
So actually, I recall seeing it on Twitter, a few months ago, maybe when it first started, and I was intrigued. But I hold basically three different jobs, and I just sort of let it go. And then he interviewed Brett Hofstadter, who was writing a book, Goodnight Moon, who I collaborate with. And he did a shout out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. I'm in. I want to do it. And it was especially fitting for me to do it today because this is, of course, the anniversary of when we last left the moon. And so I just thought it was really fitting. But yeah, it word Twitter for sure, social media, and then word of mouth from other collaborators.
And why did you want to participate? What do you think about, having your voice as part of this project?
I think it's such a valuable mission. I think, Nathan just said it himself, the audience isn't people tomorrow or, whoever on social media today. The audience is our future selves. And I think we struggle so hard when we look at Apollo and we're like, wait, do you remember when, what were you thinking? And that was a very small part of the world. The engineers remembered, or certainly everyone remembers Apollo 11 but there's so much more stuff going on in space. I think it's really fascinating for him to get sort of people off the street and then, people who purport to be experts like me, space lawyer, and to get those different perspectives. And I am, I'm really interested in going back now. I mean, I went on the website and was looking at some of the names and thinking, yeah, I'm just going to start clicking through and listening. It's also for me, I'm a lawyer, so if I get to talk, I love it. So that, that's one of the reasons. But it gives the opportunity to give voice to my students is so special. They really, especially lawyers, I'm trying very hard to make them be creative because with respect to space law in particular, you really have to be creative. And so I'm making them do things like write blogs for the National Space Society. And I'm encouraging them to do things like this because it will help them evolve their own ideas about space and not just sort of reiterate what I say.
Okay. And you were talking earlier just about how not a lot of people are aware that we're going back to the moon. And so do you see this project as just the capsule part, or is it also like 365 new people that now know we're going back to the moon, right?
Absolutely. And I think, the more, I'm going to take this and put it all over my social media platforms. And it's not like I have tens of thousands of followers or anything. But I think word of mouth for everything helps. And I think what he's capturing is that wonder. We're going to go back to the moon. This is our Apollo moment. We're calling it Artemis, but this is it. But at the same token, we're so disconnected from it, which we weren't during the Apollo era, right? And so I think this is a really good way of trying to build that inspiration again. This is a really inspirational moment in the history of humanity. And it, unfortunately, we're all so self-absorbed and dealing with a pandemic and so forth. But mainly we're pretty self-absorbed. And if we're not directly dealing with the space industry, we're not thinking about that. And I think that's a real shame. And I really applaud this effort to reinstill the inspiration that space and space activities are.
And I know you said this at the beginning, but I'm recording this now real quick. So can you please just give me your titles again?
Sure, I'm Michelle Hinlin. I'm the co-director of the Center for Air and Space Law at the University of Mississippi School of Law, and I'm the co-founder of For All Moonkind, the only organization in the world committing to protecting our heritage in outer space. And I am the executive vice president of the National Space Society, which is the largest civilian organization in the United States. I don't know why I say civilian, the largest organization in the United States focused on building human communities in space.
Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to say to me before I pass it back to Nathan?
See my t-shirt? T-shirts for sale.
Ooh.
Christmas is coming. Protect the boot prints.
Oh, love it. Actually, sorry. Can you spell your last name for us real quick?
Oops, sorry. Yes, Hanlon.
Gotcha. All right, we're good to go. I'm going to pass it back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
She's in Mississippi, is that what I understand?
Are you in Mississippi?
I'm actually in Connecticut right now.
Oh, Connecticut.
Where's she
Okay.
based out of?
But you're based in Connecticut, you're saying?
I do 6 months. 6 months.
Oh, 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, Connecticut and Oxford, Mississippi.
So what's the state halfway between those two places? That's
Oh my God,
great.
it's the most awful drive. Yeah, but definitely like Southern Virginia, Northern Kentucky is where I end up doing the overnight. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, and I would love to talk to more of your students. So, and anybody else, the people on the bus, I could give you some cards whenever. That would be great fun. Maybe we could do that. I should come join you someday for your commute. And
that would be great. Yeah. And let's get that vaccine, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, both my sons are in vaccine trials. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Where are you based?
Houston, Texas.
Okay. All right. Yeah. You're not far at all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. And thank you for everything you're doing. Really, really great.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.